Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn decided to galvanize his MAGA street cred. He was at an event over in Macon County, North Carolina, and he was still incensed about the fact that not enough people are believing their election fraud lies that they're now pushing and trying to implement in laws across the country. So a little bit of that frustration might boil over to something that's a bit bigger if enough people just don't listen to him. Let's hear what he had to say.
The things that we are wanting to fight for, it doesn't matter if our votes don't count.
That's exactly right.
Because if our election systems continue to be rigged and continue to be stolen, then it's going to lead to one place, and that's bloodshed.
Right.
And I will tell you, as much as I'm willing to defend our liberty at all costs, there's nothing that I would dread doing more than having to pick up arms against a fellow American. And the way that we can have recourse against that is if we all passionately demand that we have election security in all 50 states.
That's how you avoid us taking up arms against fellow Americans, is you do what we tell you to do, because that's democracy. Here's a guy who got elected into office, into US Congress, spouting off things like this, but he wasn't done there. He also talked about the people from January 6th that decided to go with this same kind of approach to democracy, as he likes to tout there, with bloodshed, and he called them political prisoners. Let's listen to that part.
What are you doing to support the 535 Americans that were held capture from January 6th?
Political hostages, make no doubt. So this is something that we are trying to figure everything out about. There are some criminal activities going on when my office literally is sick of. We have a mob law to be able to ask almost any federal agency any question we want. And when we're seeking answers, they are giving us the biggest runaround that you possibly can imagine. And so the big problem is we don't actually know where all the political prisoners are. And so if we were to actually be able to go and try and bust them out, and let me tell you, the reason why they've taken these political prisoners is because they're trying to make an example, to say, because they don't want to see the mass protests going on in Washington.
It's weird, when you arrest people that are breaking the law, they're making an example of them. It's that whole thing where they like to talk about, where they say you want to deter other people from doing the same crime again by making an example of them. That's something we just don't do here. But anyway, so after these things all came forward, and plenty of people, justifiably so, were upset about his comments. Let's not forget, now by the way, in that same event, a minute earlier, this is from the Washington Post. A minute earlier in his remarks, Cawthorn was holding a shotgun. He was holding a shotgun that he signed as part of a raffle conducted by the County Republican Party. So Luke Ball, the spokesman for Cawthorn, said in a statement Monday that the lawmaker, in his statements, in no way is supporting or advocating for any form of violence. Okay, more. In his comments, this is what a spokesperson continued to say. Cawthorn is clearly advocating for violence not to occur over election integrity questions. He fears others would erroneously choose that route, and strongly states that election integrity issues should be resolved peacefully and never through violence. Now, that is the last resort that Cawthorn said, because it would hurt his heart to take up arms against his fellow Americans. But it's what we have to do if our demands for them to just do what we tell them now doesn't work.
Well, you guys saw the tape, and they're amazing. They know it's on tape, and they just lie anyway. So it would be different if he said, I'm worried that it's gonna head in that direction, and I don't want it to head in that direction. Instead, he said, I'm going to be part of the people picking up arms against fellow Americans if it heads in that direction. Well, that's totally different. That's threatening violence. And he talked about bloodshed, and then he says, now we don't get the electoral security figured out, this is what's going to happen. And again, he was an active part of that hypothetical where he would pick up the weapon and shoot you, fellow Americans. So do they actually mean electoral security? Of course not. If they wanted to actually spend money making sure that we have paper ballots and that every election is as secure as humanly possible, every progressive in the country totally agrees 100%. No question, I'd fund that as much as it needed, maybe twice as much, right? No, they mean, so because you have to do code words for conservatives. Then they never actually mean what they say. So when they say electoral security, that means any election we didn't win was rigged. So that means if we don't win next time, I'm gonna pretend it was electoral security issues, and then I'm gonna shoot you. And so then you say, well, come on, are they really gonna do that? Well, they broke into the Capitol. they did the mob, and they said they were gonna hang Mike Pence, and they were gonna kill Nancy Pelosi, etc. And Madison Cawthorn saw that, and he just told you in the same tape that those were heroes. What do you call them? Political hostages. And he said maybe we should bust them out. What are you, Bane? We're going to start with Blackgate Prison. Gotham is yours. I mean, these guys are brazenly, that's a United States congressperson, brazenly promoting criminality and saying maybe we should bust out the criminals in prison that look to kill other members of Congress and the Republican vice president. And this is the party of law and order.
Yeah, it's not. They don't even watch Law and Order. If they watch Law and Order, at least they have some kind of working framework or of buzzwords that actually made sense. But instead, he says these are political hostages. Like, there's video of them. They shouldn't have been there. They just kind of walked through open doors. Yeah, they knew exactly what was going on. If not, they're stupid. And we need to look out for how stupid they are and how that could negatively affect people who aren't stupid. And then just I thought the big lie was about election security, but the big lie is this thing he says where it's like, we Republicans would hate to take up arms against our fellow Americans. BS. I call the biggest load of BS. Nothing makes them as aroused politically anyways, and bordering on other forms of arousal. If you see the way they caress their guns, they're so happy they cling to them. It makes them so excited, the thought that maybe they could take up arms against their fellow Americans. And he says, if we gotta have election security in order to not do that, you did have election security. Those ongoing audits have brought back bupkis. Every challenge that you've actually tried to push through any kind of system, that system that you so devoutly worship and cherish as the American ideal, all the people who are ostensibly even on your side in that aren't just creaming themselves over some kind of weird self-victimization leading to revolution, everybody said that you're full of it. I do understand, that's the saddest part, is we all understand it's all theater and it's all grift and it's all people like Cawthorn. They look and they say, I know he's a fresh young face and he's in a wheelchair and people will believe that he got that way as a result of war or something because he keeps hinting at that. And they use that every single way. Oh, there's no way that no matter what terrible stuff this guy can come up with to say, that you would dare call him out because of his condition and his situation. Well, I'm only going after him on the merits of what he said, and nothing that he said has any merit.
Well, Brett, you and several other people did, and he did feel the pressure. So I want to point out how he did point out the things that, again, I'm glad you brought up the fact that his condition and everything like that, because in trying to backpedal on this a little bit, I'm just gonna give you one piece that he had in an interview with the Rocky Mountain, was it Rocky Mountain News? Yes, Rocky Mountain News.
Smoky
Mountain, yeah. Smoky Mountain News had an interview with him and he decided to backpedal just a little bit because he didn't expect this much attention. He wanted to just get his clout. So they asked him about those things about busting out the insurrectionists. And he said, if anybody interpreted what I said, bust them out, as me getting out of my wheelchair and going Rambo mode and getting these guys out through some kind of illegal action, that by no means is what I meant. I absolutely mean that I just want to make sure that these people are having due process under the law. I want to make sure that people are allowed to have bail that's set at a reasonable number. I want them to be tried by their peers. I just want normal due process. So of course, now he has to bring up the fact he's in a wheelchair and he didn't literally mean he's gonna bust out of his wheelchair, dive in and pull people out of the prison. Because that's what people were saying, right? You weren't inspiring others to do it when you said all those things. It was just, only people just thought it was you that was gonna dive out and pull people out. So that's his response to make sure people maybe are disarmed from criticizing his very, very violent messaging.
Yeah, except he said, I would hate to have to pick up a gun and against my fellow Americans. So don't hide behind your wheelchair after you said I would pick up the gun. So, and you can pick up a gun in a wheelchair. You did it earlier. So, but don't get me wrong. I also know you're a coward. And just like Mo Brooks, just like Donald Trump, on January 6th, they said, march down the Capitol and we're right there with you, we're gonna walk with you. And they went into their limos and they went into their mansions and then they laughed their asses off at the suckers who went and did their political violence for them that are sitting in prison right now. And this is what every Republican does, honestly, a lot of politicians do, talk out of both sides of their mouth. So why does he retract it now? So he can say to people, no, I'm a legitimate politician. I didn't threaten violence. I'm good, I'm good. But then he could go turn to his voters and say, remember, I'm the one that told you to pick up your guns and make sure that we do a bloodshed. Because he knows Republican voters love bloodshed and they hate rule of law. The only thing that they care about is me, 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 me. By rule of law, they meant I have power over you. And if it means justice, they hate it and they don't want any piece of it. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.